Modern dating is really hard, and it's being made even harder by these insane, crazy women.
Hi, and welcome to, or back to, my channel where I offer my thoughts and opinions about whatever catches my attention. I'm Kit, and today, in honor of Valentine's Day, we're going to talk about Sydney Watson's video, They're Making Dating Impossible. I'm not entirely sure who is making dating impossible, though I assume it's the people on her thumbnail. But I do find it interesting that even though Sydney says in the opening that she hasn't talked about dating in a while because it brings interesting people who enjoy hating women to her channel and she doesn't like it, this whole video, she only talks about women. Does Sydney really not know there's a whole ecosystem of channels that just talk shit about women and how awful they are, / how they're ruining everything, and thus that's why women need to be controlled? Well, based on this video, there's a lot Sydney doesn't know, so let's get into it.
One of my dear darling friends sent me this video to laugh at, but rather than finding it very funny, it just made me incredibly sad for everybody still in the dating world.
I'm sure you've probably seen that person that does messages their Tinder matches first with the most diabolical, just random shit. I do this too. It's one of my favorite hobbies. So every week I'm going to be making one of these episodes and showing you the things I've said to potential mates.
I won't lie, and maybe I'm alone in this, I think it's a little weird to go out of your way to traumatize men on the internet for views. The lads are simply trying to find someone to love as well. But more importantly, who is intentionally matching with this person on dating apps? Do you have some sort of humiliation fetish? What is going on here?
Here's one of my first ones from this week. You ever ate a hot dog backwards? I feel like this is a great way to open a conversation because there's no wrong answer, you know? Now this one I think is fucking hilarious. Do you think bugs would choose to work a 9 to 5 if they had better health insurance? God knows I would. I'm not really sure what the theme is with the hot dogs today.
Do you think leftists tried not to be funny on purpose, or do you think it just happens that way?
I really don't see what's wrong with those messages. They're better than a generic, hey, or how are you? And what about this is traumatizing? I have more faith in men than that, but honestly, I suspect Sydney's real issue with this person is their appearance.
Apparently, women like our friend Bunny here are making dating a lot harder than it needs to be. And during my travels of the internet, I came to find out that this is apparently more of a feature of modern dating, not a bug. And because of women who look and act this way, it's given rise to the term septum ring theory, or nose ring theory. So because my birth year starts with a 1-9, I had absolutely no idea what this meant and had to look it up. And apparently it refers to women who have a septum piercing, or I guess nose piercings in general, being mentally unwell and psychotic.
Alright kids, I just woke up and I saw this comment and was like, what does this mean? So I did my little research on the internet, the TikTok search bar, and it turns out that I'm fucking crazy. I mean, he ain't wrong. I'm in therapy, I'm medicated, I'm bi, whatever.
At least they're admitting to it. I don't know what to do with it.
So, if I'm following this correctly, women are making dating more difficult because they get septum piercings, which means they're in therapy, medicated, and bisexual. I have so much to say. They do know that all those things can be true of women who don't have septum piercings, right? And that septum piercings don't make people bi? And that none of those things are bad? In fact, actively taking care of your mental health is a good thing, actually. But finally, if you don't want to date someone for whatever reason, don't. But women don't owe people dateable. If you don't find someone dateable because they have a septum piercing or whatever, that's fine. But it's not something they're doing to you to make your life more difficult.
What's becoming increasingly clear, and is probably obvious to a bunch of you, is that there is a huge schism that has developed between men and women. And this same group of women who go out of their way to let you know that they hate men, that they don't need men, that men are terrible, horrible demon creatures, are simultaneously quite confused why they're having so much trouble finding a man to date. More specifically of the liberal variety.
This video is for my girlies who are in relationships with liberal men, more specifically people that are just super down with human rights, women's rights, don't support genocide, aren't transphobic, aren't homophobic, aren't racist type shit, you know? I'm curious where you found them, and if you think there's any left. Don't get me wrong, super happy that you got your hands on one. It's kind of giving ultra rare, 24 karat gold Labubu type shit. Like, that's super awesome. Just curious if you think there's any left and where you would direct us single girls to find them.
Honey, they don't exist. They're too busy getting pegged. Jokes aside, there's actually this humorous trend on social media where these women once again are asking not only where the liberal men are, but where are the liberal men who behave like conservative men?
Do you want to know one of the saddest realizations I recently had? Was that as a liberal woman, it is really hard to find a man who is willing to play the more traditional masculine role in the relationship in today's day and age, who is not a conservative. A man who wants to pay on the first date, who wants to open your door, who has that want and desire to take care of you and to provide, who is not a conservative.
Videos like this are so surreal to me, and it's very hard to put into words why, but I'm going to try.
It's surreal to me too, but I'll let Sydney go first.
I don't think there's anything wrong or weird or strange or inherently leftist about wanting to be treated as an autonomous, independent person. There's nothing wrong with that.
So far, we agree.
But I think it's quite strange to participate in the same ideology that has browbeaten men for decades, insisted that chivalry and sort of traditional values are a tool of the patriarchy, and then turn around when you're ready and say, no, I want it now. I personally don't think that treating women, particularly with respect and decency and kindness and blah, 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 should be a left-wing or right-wing thing, just like I don't think that treating men with decency and kindness and love should be a particularly left-wing or right-wing thing. However, in the context of men acting this way, it's typically conservative traditional beliefs that underpin this behavior. I'm sorry it's this way. You've told all the liberal men that everything has to be 50-50 and that you want to be fully equal to him, and he's going to act that out. He's going to expect you to behave in such a way that demonstrates that. And fair enough, you've told him that's what you want.
Did Sydney miss the first reel she showed where the woman was talking about men who are into human rights, women's rights, don't support genocide, and aren't transphobic, homophobic, or racist? Unfortunately, that doesn't describe most conservative men, and conservative men don't have a lock on general courtesy. And truthfully, I, and most of us, I imagine, would rather find someone who, actively believes in human rights than someone who makes a show of opening a door for me. And I have a really hard time believing that men, specifically liberal men, have gotten the message that they're bad and they should treat women like they're barely there on a date. That just sounds like, oh, you want equality? Well, I'm going to treat you like the dirt on my shoe. Of course, I would say that's not prevalent in daily life, though it's entirely possible there are men out there who think and behave that way. I would advise against dating them. Also, that's a lazy way of thinking. Anyway, back to Sydney. She shows some reels of women complaining men aren't approaching them, and is it possible, just possible, that the men out that night didn't want to approach for some reason? Also, women are not passive objects. If you find someone interesting, you can approach them. I understand that dealing with men, especially in a, hey, maybe we can date way, can be fraught because you never know how a man will react, but if you don't take the chance, nothing is going to happen. So, story time. When I worked at the gas station, I gave my number to a couple regulars, and there was one. We had a good rapport, so I thought, this'll be fine. And then he was texting me about how, and this is seared into my brain, he got hot and he had shaved all his body hair in a frenzy of sexual desire. I did regret. And I told him if he didn't stop, I would block him. He didn't stop, so I blocked him, and he still had the audacity to show up at the store and say he didn't understand why we couldn't be friends. So yeah, all that to say, you never know who you're dealing with, even when you think you do, and it's a risk either way. But even still, I would rather be the one making the first move. So, what were we talking about?
I think it's worth pointing out, because it often gets lost in this conversation, that a lot of the women who are now experiencing men withdrawing from them, young men withdrawing from them, actually had nothing to do with the messaging that caused that reaction in the first place. They were little girls when all of this was being so heavily laid on everybody. And now, unfortunately, they're the ones who are getting kicked in the head by the messaging that generations beforehand had been, forcing onto men. I don't know if I articulated that well at all. Hopefully I did.
Right. I get what she's saying, though you don't want to be creepily hit on anymore? Well, I just won't approach women ever still sounds like I'm taking my ball and going home, which is, maybe it's true these young women don't know what it's like to be approached by random men and thus don't know why women didn't like it. And though I understand they're interpreting it to mean they're not attractive, not all men, but most of the men who approached me were usually good looking, but they managed to say the most skin crawling, I want to disappear into the earth forever things to me that just instantly ruined any attraction. And I'm pretty sure they thought they were giving smooth lines. So, I promise, if you think you're missing out on the good old days when men would approach women, you're not. Anyway, now we shift on to apolitical men, and Sydney doesn't understand the issue. I'm shocked.
I love that you guys don't even have to tell these women that you're right-wing anymore. You can just say, I don't care, and they'll dump you anyway. Once you actually meet men and spend time with them, you realize that they don't really care about too many things anyway. This is not terribly surprising behavior. These women have actually pathologized having normal conversations in an effort to get to know somebody, to ask them questions to see if you're compatible. Because these people do not live on planet Earth with the rest of us, rather than spending the time getting to know somebody as a human being like you normally would, they have instead decided that questions are only for finding out if someone is empathetic and progressive and whatever. Lord help you guys. Seriously.
Setting aside that asking questions is a way to get to know someone, and I love asking questions as anyone who knows me knows, well, I think Kat Black said it best.
This was a quote that came up in a conversation that I was having on a podcast about Laverne Cox being in a relationship with a conservative man. I have adjusted to the mindset of I only share my body with men who are willing to politically defend it.
That's something every woman should abide by, in my opinion. Kat also discusses what it was like to date a conservative man in that video, and she wrote an article about the folly of being a woman who desires traditional men. I'll link both below. Also, Sydney?
I'm not trying to pick on single mothers, just by the way, because I got love for you ladies, but I knew as soon as I saw this video that this woman is in fact a single mother.
That is why you get misogynists in your comments.
Between progressive women and conservative/right-wing women, us righties are much less worried about finding somebody who aligns with us 100% politically. But unsurprising to none of you, the leftist progressive women are incredibly concerned with it. I found one completely insane survey that, if I'm reading this correctly, determined that very liberal women would prefer to date an ex-felon over someone with a differing political view.
Liberals and leftists aren't interchangeable. Sydney literally shared a reel about a woman wondering if, as a leftist, she should choose liberal or other on a dating app. And also, a felony can range from copyright infringement to murder, so...
Because of course you've decided that the felon is less bad.
Mandatory reminder that Donald Trump is a felon.
I also want to give props to men here because on a statistical front, and this has been demonstrated over and over, men are just less interested in someone's political views aligning with theirs. Not 100%, just really at all. And I think that's quite evolved, although other people would argue that's just because men will go after anything with a heartbeat. And maybe there's some truth to that too. I'm going to determine that it's because you guys are more interested in someone being nice and kind and lovely rather than who she votes for. Modern dating is really hard, and it's being made even harder by these insane, crazy women who are so fixated on finding somebody who has as extreme political opinions as them, whereas men are just out here like, I just want to find someone who's nice and normal. So maybe the women are doing you a favor then in that case. What I think is genuinely crazy here is that men seem to be on a quest to find someone to share their life with, and there is this massive cohort of women who won't even look their way. It doesn't matter if they're apolitical, it doesn't matter if they're a little bit right-wing, it doesn't matter if they're the most extreme right-wing. These women, these progressive women, view all men through the same lens and tar them with the exact same brush. Like I said before, I don't think there's anything wrong at all with wanting somebody who shares your core values, because like I said, it makes life a lot easier, it makes doing a bunch of things a lot easier, like child rearing and all that fun stuff. However, I think that having somebody with whom you disagree on a multitude of topics actually makes life really interesting, and it means that you can have discussions and debates and you can exchange ideas and grow with each other. If you think the exact same way about absolutely everything, personally, this is just me, you guys are welcome to disagree, but I don't think that's very fun.
I have so many thoughts. First, yes, it's more interesting when you don't agree on everything, but there are some things that are non-negotiable. We're not talking about a difference in what you think the tax rate should be. we're talking about human rights. Second, I love that Sydney says dating is being made even harder by these insane, crazy women. By the way, misogynists love it when you call women crazy. Looking for someone who has the same extreme political opinions as them. Nothing Sydney showed was extreme. We're just supposed to assume these women are advocating for something completely off the wall. But even if they were, that's their right. Someone being different to you, even if you theoretically have a shared goal in common, dating in this case, which makes it so you can't accomplish said shared goal together, is not them doing something to you. And as Sydney said, they're doing you a favor. By being upfront about who they are and what they're looking for, they're not wasting your time. And considering the times we are currently living in, I have a hard time seeing how someone being apolitical is more evolved. But it is very easy to be apolitical when you think you, for some reason or another, are safe. And that's not a good thing. You should care about other people. And that's it for this video. My socials and Patreon are linked below along with sources and resources. I would like to thank everyone for watching through to the end, and of course, I would like to give extra thanks to my patrons. Have a wonderful day, do something nice for yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.